There we go. So we should be, is that all good for you, Delaney?
It looks great.
Okay, cool. So thank you everybody for taking the time and coming to the session. Today we're going to be talking about Dexterity, which is the tool behind Microsoft Dynamics GP. We'll do a quick introduction. My name's David Musgrave. I'm Managing Director of Winthrop Development Consultants. I'm a Microsoft Dynamics GP MVP and a GPUG All-Star. Thank you very much to everybody who nominated me. That's wonderful. I've been working with Dexterity since 2.04, since 1994. I'm known in the development community for some of the work that I've done with pioneering cross-dictionary development and a number of other advanced techniques that I've worked out. I've presented those techniques and various other things at the various conferences and training courses since about 1998. I'm the original developer of, you might recognize some of these, but name printers, advanced security, field level security. If you're in Australia or have an Australian company, the business activity statement, Omni Tools and Omni Price, the support debugging tool and menus for Visual Studio Tools. Now under the Winthrop Development Consultants label, the support debugging tool is rebranded as GP Power Tools. We have batch posting service toolkit, and the menus for Visual Studio Tools is now the Visual Studio Tools or Visual Studio Integration Toolkit. So moving on, I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and if you haven't been to one of my presentations, you wouldn't have seen this slide, which it's a shame we haven't got the audio, but normally it gets a few laughs. As you can see, Perth is the little red dot on the west coast, and Australia is a lovely place. You should come and visit. It's a very safe place to come. So, hold on. It is, didn't she? There we go. It missed this. So, all right. That's just a little bit of a glimpse of the city of Perth. It is actually really a beautiful place. So, Delaney, if we can run the first poll, I just want to get an understanding of who here has actually worked with Dexterity or how much people know about Dexterity. So sadly, we could only get 5 questions on here, so we couldn't get the last one, which I thought would be appropriate. It's on the slide deck. It says, I don't even know what Microsoft Dynamics GP is. Why am I here? Hopefully no one would answer that anyway, so if you could respond on the poll, it would be a bit of an idea.
All right, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so it looks like 85% voted, and we had 0% have never heard of Dexterity, 18% know it's related to Microsoft Dynamics GP somehow, 55% know that Dexterity is the development tool underlying Dynamics GP, 27% have looked at Dexterity but not really used it, and 0% are advanced Dexterity developers.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It gives me an idea then of where we're at. So we don't have that many people who have got development experience, but most of you do know where Dexterity fits into the equation. So what I wanted to do just quickly is Dexterity is a tool that you can use when to modify or customize the Dynamics, the Dynamics GP product. But there are some other tools as well. So I'm not going to be talking about them in any detail this session, but there are tools such as Modifier with VBA, the Visual Studio tools for Microsoft Dynamics GP. You can also use Modifier with Visual Studio tools. Then obviously we've got Dexterity, and recently added into Dexterity you've got the service-based architecture and .NET interop functionality, which is in 2015 onwards. So the reason I bring up the other tools is it's important to know that you don't have to be afraid about mixing and matching tools for a project. Sometimes you're not going to get one tool that can do everything or do everything well, and you might need to use more than one tool to complete the project. So the other thing is, if you are building Windows, there are some user interface design standards, and if you follow those, your windows that you create or the changes that you make to the window will be seamless, and an end user would not be able to tell that there was even a customization in place if they've never seen the original window. So, all right. So, Microsoft Dexterity, there's a few pros and cons to if you're using that as your tool as opposed to some of the other tools. So it's basically, it is the same development environment that was used to create Dynamics GP. Anything you develop in Dexterity is immediately web client compatible, which is wonderful because it means that as ISVs have developed software that runs using Dexterity, just because Microsoft added web client functionality to Dynamics, all of our third-party add-ons or ISV products are now web client compatible. You can create seamless integrations, new windows, new business logic. You can add or alter existing business logic with triggers. We can reuse any of the resources such as tables and functions and procedures in the core code. We can develop cross-dictionary code where we have our customization against another ISV's product, or even third-party products, which basically any product not in the Dynamics dictionary. So project, HR, manufacturing, those sorts of modules, field service. Dexterity customizations are very easy to upgrade, and one of the main reasons for that is that with Dexterity, you never actually change the original source code. And in fact, unless you are a source code partner, you don't even have access to see the source code, but you don't need to see it to be able to write customizations. That's one of the beauties of Dexterity. With Dexterity 14, which is for 2015 onwards, we have extra abilities, so being able to access .NET resources, so you have the entire .NET world available to you. You can also create web service procedures which then are exposed as web services in GP 2015. On the cons, there's really only one major one, is that while you can modify any Dynamics window that's part of the dynamics.dic, the core dictionary, you cannot modify directly a third-party dictionary. So if I wanted to modify a window that exists in the project dictionary, I can't actually do that. There are ways of working around that, but you can't change their window. That's one of the limitations that is in Dexterity. So people are going to say, well, why do we have Dexterity? There are already other languages out there. Why did Microsoft, or why did Great Plains at the time, create a whole new language? So this here should try and explain what happened. Basically, they were looking for one language that they could use to develop products for a new graphical user interface. At this stage, they had their text-based Great Plains accounting software, but they wanted to create the Dynamics product, and they were looking for a language that they could use that would work on Windows, that would work on Macintosh, that would work with a variety of database platforms. And there was nothing available at that time. They didn't want to have to write it twice. They wanted to write it once and it work on everything. So they ended up saying, well, we'll create our own language, specifically designed for developing business applications. So that's what they did. And then they put a lot of effort into making sure that we had the tools to customize the product, both from the developer's perspective using Dexterity, but also from end users so that they could use the modifier and report writer tools. They also put a lot of effort into internationalization so that the product could be easily translated. So that means that you could actually pull out all of your messages and strings, translate them to another language, put them back, and now you've got the entire product running in a new language without any changes to source code. So that was one of the features that they were looking at. The final thing is that they also wanted to make sure that it could work well in the client-server environment, but also include a process server so that you could offload processing. This, in the early days of computing was particularly useful because not all the machines were that powerful, so it would allow you to offload work to a more powerful machine. So just a few technical details of about Dexterity. It's developed in Microsoft Visual C++. It does have some components now which are written in C#, but when it was first created it was C++. It's the same language that the Microsoft Office suite was developed in. One of the reasons that they wanted to use that was also later on when they added VBA functionality that could only be added to applications written in C++. It's been 32-bit since version 2, and if any of you have been around a long time and worked back in the Windows 16-bit Windows era, you will remember that you needed to load the Win32s libraries. I remember doing that. It's been Y2K compliant since the beginning, so dates have never been an issue for it. One of the cool things, though, is it separates the business logic from the technology. So the underlying technology has changed, Windows has changed, the database platforms have changed over time, but there is still some code in the core product which has never been altered since it was first written. So that gives us that ability to have a layer between the technology and the actual application. It's data dictionary based, which means that we have a series of dictionaries that run with a runtime module. Every object is a resource within a data dictionary, so every field, table, form, data type, report, they're all resources in the data dictionary. The scripting language is actually called Sanskrit, and that was actually named after the initials of Stephen A. Nikolai, who was one of the developers who created the scripting language. So just a quick look at the development process. So I'm going to actually swap to another deck. Okay, so this is just a really simplified client system here. So when you click on your icon, you'll notice that the first thing it runs is dynamics.exe, which then loads the launch file, which is dynamics.set. That contains a list of the dictionaries to load. So in this situation, we've just got the one dictionary. It loads dynamics.dic as product number 0. If we had any custom forms or reports, they would be in the custom dictionaries on either side. They get created the first time you go into the report writer or modifier. So for me to create a customization in Dexterity, I'm going to take the dynamics.dic out of my live environment, put it into a developer folder underneath the Dexterity folder. I'm going to rename it, and that's where I'm going to actually do all of my development. When I've finished with my development and I'm ready to actually distribute it, I will take it through. Okay, that's me adding on the resources. Anything I add gets added. Okay, when I'm ready to distribute it, there's steps that I'll go through which allow me to extract all my changes and produce a chunk file. So a chunk file is a self-installing dictionary. So then I can place that chunk file back into the live environment, and when I launch, you'll get the message, do you want to include the code? And when it includes the code, it installs the details into this launch file, and it creates the dictionary. And then that's basically the product is now delivered and running on your target system. Okay, back. So I'm going to be doing something really stupid now. I'm going to do a live demo. And the reason I say this is live is not only am I going to actually do the demo and create a bit of a customization for you on the fly, just so you get an idea of how Dexterity looks and works, but I'm going to let you guys choose what the actual product that we're going to custom. So we're going to modify, we're going to add a couple of user-defined fields to one of 3 windows. So if we can get the first poll up. will get you to choose whether or not you want to do customer maintenance, vendor maintenance, or item maintenance.
All right, attendees on the line, go ahead and vote. And I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, they're coming in last minute. All right, 92%. I'm going to go ahead and close. And then I'll share those results. It looks like 25% said the first option that starts with sales. 58% said the middle option with purchasing, vendor maintenance, PM vendor maintenance, and 17% said the last one, inventory.
Okay, so we're going to modify PM vendor maintenance. So then what we're going to do is, I'll bring up the next slide. I'd like to get the audience to choose. We're going to put one field as a string field of 80 characters and one as a drop-down list. And we've got a couple of quick polls so you can decide whether or not, or what we're going to call the fields. So we'll get you to do the next poll, Delaney.
All right, guys, go ahead and vote for the string of 80 characters. And we'll close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close. Results were overwhelmingly 58%. The first one, comment, default, enter comment here.
Okay, that's what it shall be. And so then the last one is what the drop-down list should be. So the last poll.
All right, go ahead and vote. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, all right. 92% have voted, and it looks like 25% static.
They won the animals.
Bad, but animals won. So kangaroo,
Okay,
koala, platypus.
There we go. Yeah, they actually, when the platypus was first discovered, they didn't actually realize what it was. They thought that they actually sent a stuffed platypus back to the United Kingdom, and they thought that they'd just taken lots of different bits of animals and put it together, because it's the weirdest thing ever. So yeah, they're just very weird.
Biat's laughing at us in the chat.
Yeah. All right. So I now have everything I need. So what we're going to do, this is the process that we'll run through. So I'm going to create the user-defined fields. I'm going to create a parallel table. So this will be a table that sits alongside the vendor master table to allow us to store our additional data. I will add those fields to the window, and that will then be created as an alternate window. I'll create a global variable to track when that alternate window is in use. That is so that if you don't have the alternate window in use, you don't get errors when you open the window and my code runs. So my code will say, hey, you don't have the alternate, don't do anything. So I'll have functions to handle the table events, which is the CRUD events, which is create, read, update, and delete. Then I'll create triggers to handle the additional events, so basically opening the window, closing the window, setting default values, etc. And the final step then is registering the triggers. So that is actually where we pop out of here, and we start the actual development. So I've got about, I don't know, 40 minutes to do this. I don't think it should take that long. We'll see how we go. If you have any questions, let the lady know by putting it in the chat, and I will attempt to answer it. So first step, I'll just talk you through what I'm doing. First step is to take the dynamics.dic out of my live environment. I'm going to copy it into my to my development environment. I am going to rename it. Okay, and now I have an environment set up already, so I've got some of the things here, so I'm going to now launch Dexterity. Come back. Full screen. There we go. So what I'll do is, this is a Dexterity environment, and in here I can see all of the different resource types. So there are all the forms that are in the Dexterity products, all 1,800 of them. There are almost 1,600 tables and almost 1,300 reports. So what I'm going to do to start with, though, I'm going to create a work set. And this allows me to keep all the bits that I'm working on together. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is I need to grab that PM vendor maintenance form and add it to the work set. So I can now use it there. All right, so now that I've got my work set, I'm going to start creating some of these fields. So that first field was going to be comment, and it's going to be a string 80 data type. And we'll have a second field was animal, and that'll be a drop-down list. Oops. Okay, so I've now got the two fields created. So the next step now is to create my parallel table. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to grab the PM vendor master table and add it to the work set. So this is the PM vendor master table. So it's PM to 00200. So I'm going to create my parallel table. So I'm going to call this the UDF PM vendor master. I'm going to call it UDF, and I'm going to give it the same number and add it to the purchasing series. So now in here, the part of the thing of being a parallel table is it needs the same primary key, which is going to be the vendor ID. So I'll put the vendor ID in as my primary key. So and I can now actually add a key based on that. And that's primary. Okay, so I've got my key. Oops, I forgot to number it. Let's make it key number 1. Okay, so then I'm going to add in my UDF fields. So my UDF comment and my UDF animal. Okay. So I've now got that completed. I've got the form in here, so now we can actually start doing some work on the form. So now, if you've used modifier before, you will notice that this is actually very similar, but you actually get to see by default, you get to see all the hidden fields. So now I need to make this window a bit bigger. I'm going to actually need 60 more pixels to fit in the two fields. So if I go over to my object and visual, the height is currently 501, so I'm going to make that 561. And then I can actually grab all the bits at the bottom. And the line, bring all that down. And this bit. So now I've made some space to add my extra fields. So it should fit in there. Okay, so if I go here, I can go to UDF. There are my two fields. So UDF comment and UDF animal. So I'm going to line these up so that they start in line with the existing fields. I'm going to give them some prompts. Okay, I'm going to make these the same width as the existing one. So again, using the arrange tools make life really easy. So I've selected an existing one, I select my other two, and I say size to widest. So now I'm change the properties on these to add on the underline. And then I'm going to link the prompt. So linking the prompt means if I disable the fields, the prompt will get disabled as well. And then we're going to set the tab sequence. So you just tab through until you get to the fields that you want. Okay, so now I want to go comment. So I've double-clicked, tab, double-click, and so they're now added correctly to the tab sequence. So I might just bring that out to make it look like the others. Okay, so that's it as far as adding the fields. But there's nothing actually coded yet to make that work. So you'll notice that this is in here now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to basically, I'm going to create a Boolean field or a global field. Get in here, fields, and this is going to be UDF alternate. So this is used to notify me that I'm using the alternate version of PM Vendor maintenance. So that depends on what the security setting is set to, and that's going to be a Boolean, a true or false. Okay, so I've created that as a field. I'm going to make it global, which means that I can access it from anywhere. So I'll come in here and I say global field and make it a global field. Okay, so now the next part of this is we need to create some messages. So now messages are used, messages are used so that you can have text or dialogues that appear which are translatable. So you can see at the moment it's got cancel. That's used whenever you get those, are you sure you want to cancel, or save, discard, cancel dialogues. That's where the cancel comes from. And if I change this to another language, it will change in the application without having to actually change any source code. So I'm going to create some new messages which I'm going to use. Now, they need to be greater than 22,000. That's an arbitrary number, but all resources that I create are above 22,000. You can probably see that in the ID column showing on the screen at the moment. So the default, I think we had enter comment here, was going to be the default text for, let me go back to my slide deck. So enter comment here, and then we have kangaroo, koala, and platypus. So we'll put these in. So what I'm going to be doing is the code that I create will be using these messages. It'll be using these messages when it actually runs, rather than having any actual text in the script. Okay, so now this is where I cheat a little bit. I'm not going to try and write all the scripts in front of you because that's really boring. I actually have the scripts already exported, but because of the actual demo that or the different product you asked me to choose, I need to do a few find and replaces. So all right. If I do this right, it'll be awesome. If I screw up, the code won't compile. So UDF animal, replace. Form.
David, we did have a question come in. An
Mm-hmm.
attendee on the line was wondering, are there any dexterity naming convention recommendations or policies?
Yes. Do you want more detail than that?
I think they might. We can save till the end, though, if you prefer.
No, I'll be able to, just give me a sec. I don't want to mess what I'm doing up here, so I will do the last bit of this, which and replace and save that. And that should now be ready to import. So the question was about naming conventions.
Mm-hmm.
So why not? Best solution is to show you. Installed with Dexterity manuals, and in the which one is it? Integration Guide manual. And in the appendices is naming conventions.
Ah, perfect.
And that takes you through. In fact, one of the cool things about tables is it shows you how these codes are created. If you ever want to know. So the first digit after the module name tells you whether it's a master, work, open history. Now, I will say that not all developers follow these naming conventions, but they should. So, all right. Ask and you shall receive an answer.
Thanks, David.
All right. So now I've got all of that code. So let's see if we can import it. And here we go. Here it is. Import. All right. So that you can see has pulled in these scripts here. So let's see if they compile. If I've done this right, they will compile. There we go. It did. So let me. Well, we're going for time. We're good for time. So what I can do is show you a little bit about what we have here. So I have got the UDF, which is got all of the code to, we'll start with this one, to read data out of my table. Okay, so that's the code to read the data out of the table. They're the two fields, goes to the table, reads it up. I got the code to write to the table. I have the code to delete from the table. So if you delete that vendor, it needs to take out the data from the parallel table as well. Okay, so this is the code which sets the default values for the fields. All right, so there's a little bit of code here which is checking whether the alternate window is in use. And that gives me a true or false value. So when I open the form, I can set my global variable based on whether the window is in use or not. Okay, when I open my window, I can set my default values. And then when I pull up a record, using the calls to display existing record, I can go retrieve my data from my parallel table. When I save my record, I can write the data to the parallel table using the call. And when I delete my vendor, I can make the delete. So that's basically the code that's needed. You could possibly do it without the extra functions. I've got these functions here because it sort of simplifies things because I can call them from wherever I want to call them. All right. So at this stage, we've actually finished our code. So I'm going to go into test mode. And Okay, it's opened it on the other screen. Give me a second and I'll bring it back. Fabricam. Okay, so I'm in test mode. This allows me to actually test my application. Now, before I can actually use my application, I need to go into SQL maintenance. And for my company, there's my table, the UDF PM vendor master. I need to actually ask it to create my table for me. I probably don't need to do the drops, but it's habit. Okay, so now if I go into SQL and into my database, tables, UDF, and there's my table. No data in it at the moment, but it's all created, including the Dextro ID, all ready for use. Okay, so now if I go into my window, and we can do that, cards is the old method. There we go. Enter comment here and kangaroo. So let me pull up Ace Travel for the default values. Let's put in here because they like their koalas. Okay, see that's working now. So I can clear, that's the default values, and it pulls up Ace Travel. So we have a working customization. So now we need to deploy that. So the next stage is we can actually exit out of test mode. And in fact, we can exit out of Dynamics entirely, sorry, out of Dexterity entirely. And we're going to run the macro. So what this macro is going to do, if you remember on the slide deck, okay, we have completed the adding of our resources. So the next stage is this process here where we extract our changes out. We transfer dictionary modules, which allows us to transfer the alternate forms or reports, if there are any. In this case, we're going to have to transfer the PM vendor maintenance window. We can add our product information, and we'll create our chunk. So that process is all in this macro. And one thing I do need to make sure is that we're going to extract the PM vendor maintenance form. So it happens to be the last time I actually did this demo, it was on the vendor maintenance form. And so I don't have to make a change here. Okay, and that is in the purchasing series, so we're good to go. So this shortcut will load Dexterity utilities and run the macro. It'll all happen fairly quickly, so I don't know how much it will come through on the webinar, but it'll do those steps for us. And there we go. So now, okay, so 2341, just gone. That's our chunk file. So now we can pick up that chunk file and copy it into our live environment. In fact, I think I even had a deploy. I could have just run that as well. That actually deploys it into the live environment and automatically extracts it. So we will actually see UDF. There we go. It's now automatically a dictionary file. And if we go to the dynamics set, I've got 22 products, and the last product here is user-defined demo, field demo. So now if I launch GP, so this is 2015. All right, I go to purchasing, and I go to vendor cards, and all right, now it's not there. Okay, so it's not there. So the question is, why is it not there? And I can probably hear a few of you yelling out at me, security. The problem here is that this is the original window. So we need to tell it to open up the now alternate version of that window. So let's go and change the security setting. So pop into user security. I'm currently logged on as SA in Fabricam, and let me use default user, and I go into default user. I'll choose user defined. Okay, and in purchasing, you'll see that I've only got this choice here. I'm going to change it to use the other window and save it. And save. And if I now go back to purchasing and reopen the window, you'll see now that I've got those extra fields. And if I pull up Ace Travel, now you can see the data's already working. Okay. Now, if I didn't have, if I go back and change that security, if I took the security setting back off, we won't get any errors because the code has been told to look and make sure that the alternate window is in use before it tries to do anything. So we put it back to the original window, save, and go back to purchasing. Okay, my code, it's there, but it's not active, and you don't get any error messages. Okay, that is one thing I have seen before with code that doesn't make that check, is that you will get an error message if you don't have the alternate window. And there may be times that you don't want to use the alternate window for some reason, so the code should be looking for that. So that ends this part of the demo. So I now have, we're going for time, we've got about 15 minutes. I can take this one step further. And I don't know how interested you guys are. So I don't know, Delaney, can you open up the mics or not?
Yeah, you want me to take attendees off mute?
Yeah.
Sure. Whoa. All right, guys, okay. I'm taking you off mute. If you have any questions, feel free to speak up, and if you don't, you can mute yourself again.
Hi, David.
Hi. I just was going to say the extra thing that I can do, and I don't know how interested you guys are in seeing a little bit more coding, is I can write the scripts that will expose these vendor UDF or the user-defined fields as services for the service-based architecture. It's a bit technical and it uses a bit of Visual Studio, and I don't know how interested you are in seeing that. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions.
Not much, I think so. I mean, it might become very technical going into the web services, and in this case, probably doesn't make a lot of sense. What I was interested to see is how this code looks like in the web client. If you happen to have the web client set up.
Okay, it's been a while since I powered up the web client, and I think my web client's connected to my R2 release, not my. Actually, that's not the end of the world. I can put it into R2. Let me just see if I can get into the web client.
Yeah. If it doesn't work, my other question was about debugging mode. Is there a debugging mode with a kind of a live window where you can check what's going in behind the window when you open the window and go into the fields?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That I can demonstrate. I think that the web client stuff might not work because I think my certificate might have expired. It's been a long time since I've done anything with it. So, but I can demonstrate some of the UDF functions
It's
actually in process.
Probably more interesting than trying to show the web service integration.
Cool. We will do that. So I'm just popping it into test mode. Okay, so here's my window. So what I'm going to do is, this is the script debugger. And I am going to display existing record, put a breakpoint there. And when I save, put a breakpoint there. Okay, so when I pull up a record, I'm now stopped at the breakpoint. And I can now step through. So the first thing it did was check whether or not the alternate window is in use. And then if it is, it's now going to read the values and place them. So for the vendor ID, and this is where we can say, show me the locals. So down here.
Kind of a watch window.
There we go. So there's the vendor ID, and the current values are position number 1, which is kangaroo, and enter comment here, which is what you see on the screen. When this runs, I'll actually go into the script so we can see it all happen. So I'm going to actually open up the table buffers as well. So you'll get to see all of this working. Thank you for the question. That was a really good idea.
Yeah, because most of the time when you start creating code, it's rarely running from the first run 100% good. you sooner or later run into the need of a debugger window, live window.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can identify where my UDF table is hiding.
And that was actually my next question, if you can show us how the records are looking into the table.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So,
excellent.
All right. I'm just going to see if I can get the table bit in the debugging because this is cool if it does it. I might have to get it right from the main menu. Oh, come on, where are you?
David, as you're kind of looking through this, can you talk through a bit what the future of Dexterity is? Is it going away?
Okay. So people have asked in the past, I'm not sure I can get the table buffer stuff working, so I'm just going to run through it here. People have asked about Dexterity and what the future is. While there is a Dynamics GP product, it will be based on Dexterity. There's too much investment of the product in Dexterity, and that gives you, to give you an idea, all of that service-based architecture functionality, all of the web client functionality, all that new stuff that's getting added is added to Dexterity and then inherently becomes part of Dynamics GP. So I'm just going to step through this code. So I'm setting the vendor ID field, getting the values from the table, setting them to go out, and you can actually see them now changed on the window, and then it comes back out of the code. So you can now see that it's on the window. When I hit save, let's make a change. They don't like platypus. All right. Yeah, save. Again, now we're captured at the breakpoint. And if I run through this code, okay, so it's here checking to see whether the standard or GP record was successfully saved. It will only save my extra data if the GP record was successful. So if for any reason it failed, it won't happen. So now I'm going to go in here and we'll write the data. So we pop into here and execute. You'll see it still has like and number 2. And as we step through, when I hit save table and execute, it'll now say don't like and 3.
Great. That was awesome.
So you get to see it all running, and then the window's clear. So
regarding Dexterity language evolution, there was much talking last year at Convergence around next generation Dexterity or next Dex or something like that.
Dex, yeah, there was a term that we're using, Dex Next.
Dex
Next, yeah. Dex Next basically refers to the next version of Dexterity. So the big thing that's coming in the next version of Dexterity for GP 2016 is making the web client HTML5 rather than Silverlight. So it's not changing the scripting language. Basically, there's they have added new functionality. For example, the ability to call .NET objects, but the history there's too much old code that they don't want to rewrite. So everything is backward compatible as they develop.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
David, we did have a question come in through the question panel. Tim is wondering, are there any places to run Dexterity training in North America?
Okay, good question. And Leslie is probably not doing training right now, just due to personal circumstances. So one thing I can tell you that I am working on, and I can't say it's going to happen absolutely for sure, but I am planning in between the Reimagine and GPUG Summit coming up in September, October, in the week prior to GPUG Summit, I am trying to organize a 5-day Dexterity class to be run in Tampa, Florida, probably in the Microsoft office in Tampa, but fairly close to, in the same city as where GPUG Summit would be. And that will be a 5-day introduction class. It is possible to try and learn Dexterity by yourself, but you will get the best out of a 5-day class like that. If there is any training outside of that, I would be publicizing it on my blog. I know that Mariano Gomez sometimes runs training. I know that there is a partner, IBG, that sometimes runs training as well. But if you'd like to get training from me, I'm hoping that I will actually be able to run that class just before GPUG Summit.
Speaking of learning Dexterity, if you're a net developer, do you think it's important to learn Dexterity?
Okay, if you've got any .NET developers in your business and they're thinking, I don't want to learn Dexterity, I know .NET, Dexterity is a proprietary language, but then you ask them to create integrations or customizations against GP, and they're using tools like Visual Studio tools for Dynamics GP. They will get really confused and complain, why is Dynamics doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, if you learn Dexterity, everything makes sense. they know where to go. They know where to put the triggers on the scripts. They understand the reason the windows work the way they do. Because the windows work the way they do because Dexterity works the way it does. So I actually think that if even a .NET developer who learns Dexterity but never actually codes in Dexterity, but just understands how Dexterity works and how to use Dexterity to find information about where data is stored and what the field names are, by understanding Dexterity, you will make your .NET developer who works with Dynamics much, much more efficient. So the short answer is yes, learn it.
All right, we're getting to the top of the hour here. David, would you mind pulling up your contact information?
I can go back to the slide deck. I can do that. So we've sort of been doing the Q&A, so here's the contact information. So feel free to give me a call. I would probably say email's the best just due to the time differences. You can find me everywhere. Just look for Winthrop DC.
Yes, and this recording and PowerPoint deck will be uploaded to the GPUG website, and you'll all be emailed a content library link. So if you don't have a pen and paper to jot down his contact information now, don't worry about it. It'll be emailed straight to you. And we did have a question come in, David, as soon as you went back to your PowerPoint. Jacob was wondering, can object ID values greater than 22,000 conflict with each other between different custom dictionaries?
Okay. Each object is uniquely identified by its product ID, which is an ID provided by Microsoft for your product. So you'll see those different product or dictionary IDs in the dynamics.set. Its type, so what type of resource it is, and its resource ID. So the answer is no, they won't conflict.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, David, for sharing your expert advice and perspective with us today. You obviously know what you're talking about. It was very cool to watch. And so, guys, as I said before, I encourage you to reach out to David if you have any questions. And do please fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. David gets sent that feedback, and we do look at it to determine future sessions. If you want to see more about Dexterity, let us know. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, David.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.